The focus is on arms crossed McGee. Twitch Richardson is what we're calling her around here. Stephanie White. A head coach that doesn't know, she's not aware of, or she has the inability to make adjustments throughout a game.
So, I need you to picture the exact scene where this whole disaster begins. And spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with a player making a massive mistake on the court. It is Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White just standing on the sideline with her arms crossed while her team is getting absolutely destroyed in real time. Think back to the Minnesota Vikings when they had Adrian Peterson. Or picture the Tennessee Titans in the late 2010s and early 2020s with Derrick Henry. Can you picture their coaches saying, you know what, we are not running. We are going to pass 40 times a game. Imagine them telling Adrian Peterson that they just were not going to hand him the ball. Because opponents already know we want to hand it off. Even though you are the best back in football. The Fever just lost an absolute heartbreaker, 90-88 to the Golden State Valkyries. Let me tell you, the pure level of frustration you are about to hear has absolutely nothing to do with one bad shot or a single missed defensive assignment. Caitlin Clark played incredibly well over those 90 minutes against the Valkyries last week against the Seattle Storm. And those final 10 minutes against the Mystics, she was just unstoppable for 90 minutes. Her brilliance fooled everyone into thinking Coach Stephanie White had it figured out. No, Caitlin was just doing her own thing. Caitlin Clark was just bawling her heart out. When she is not doing that, a much deeper, more systemic issue is exposed. This is about a fundamental coaching style that league critics are calling out, arguing this scheme actively works against the team's absolute best talent. Can you imagine being stuck in that situation? Stephanie White constantly tells everyone that they need to get Caitlin easy looks. We have to get her clean looks. We have to find ways to get her the ball in prime positions. What? Because the offense, you have them running or not running, since it barely looks like an actual system when Caitlin has the ball. It is just 4 teammates standing around. Now, imagine for a moment being the best running back in the whole NFL. This is the exact comparison that perfectly captures the insanity of the situation. Picture the Tennessee Titans during the absolute peak of their power, walking up to superstar Derrick Henry, the single most dominant, unstoppable force in the league, and telling him that they were going to completely abandon the run, throwing 40 times a match instead. What is she actually good for, honestly? If we are not running the pick and roll, that 4-year, $6 million contract is just money down the drain. She complains about late offensive fouls, which sounds totally crazy, right? Well, that is the exact comparison fans are making to what is playing out on the court in Indiana. Any basketball fan can see that the pick and roll is the Indiana Fever's absolute bread and butter. Coach Stephanie White has rotation patterns that make 0 sense. She is using hockey-style line changes, swapping 3 out and then 4 out. 3 out, 3 in. 4 out, 4 in. Are some players on a minutes restriction? And why would they even be restricted? Why is the coaching staff so terrified to bench Kelsey Mitchell? The most aggravating thing about watching her play is knowing exactly how it ends. She catches the ball and you instantly know she is not passing it. And sure enough, she forces a bad shot or turns it over. She gets swatted down low. Yet, the pick and roll is the exact play that gets both Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston going offensively. But the crushing criticism right now is that Stephanie White stubbornly walks away from it, claiming the opponents already know it is coming. 90-88, as you know, this squad has 0 offensive identity. They are soft. And they got completely bullied. Yes, Golden State played extremely physical, but the Fever did not push back because our post players are too soft. Monique Billings, soft. Monique is soft. AB, soft. At least Samuelson played well. Worst coaching in the entire league. Stephanie White just watched Aaliyah Boston struggle on that play, which ended up in a jump ball. So instead of committing to the single option that forces opponents to adjust, The offense is constantly being reinvented mid-game, despite the fact that Caitlin Clark has been playing at an elite level. Yes, blame it on terrible coaching decisions. When do we finally run a consistent pick and roll with CC? Seriously? At what point? When do they consistently run that action between those two? Aliyah, you picked up 2 early fouls and sat out the entire first half. How did that impact your rhythm and shooting out there today? Yeah, honestly, I could not establish a flow only playing the second half. I think it is incredibly tough to try to figure out exactly how the officials are calling things. It is so hard to avoid charge calls when players are not even established in legal guarding positions. Honestly, credit to the Valkyries. They did a fantastic job of selling those calls and the refs fell for it, so good for them. Now, here is the exact detail that completely muddies the water and makes the problem much harder to diagnose. Caitlin Clark has been on an absolute tear lately. Just look at those final 10 minutes against Washington where she completely dominated the floor, followed by some gritty, relentless minutes against the Valkyries and that jaw-dropping highlight reel run against the Seattle Storm. But here is the real issue. I played terribly, blame the refs. I cannot buy a bucket, blame the refs. I did not secure post position, blame the refs. I can't spin inside and finish with my left hand, blame the refs. I freeze and put my head down on double teams, blame the refs. I jack up too many bad threes, blame the refs. Can't grab a rebound, blame the refs. I just went 2 whole quarters without scoring a single point, blame the refs. I would rather force Caitlin into a tough hockey assist instead of running the play, blame the refs. I refuse to shoot on a slip and roll, blame the refs. Working on my weaknesses is too hard, blame the refs. I spend my off hours recording podcasts, blame the refs. It is not the refs, it is on you. Now, analysts are pointing out that these sensational solo performances actually created a massive smokescreen, blinding everyone to the real issues. Those wild plays made it seem like the coaching staff actually had a solid game plan and was running it smoothly. But once you peel back those highlight reels and actually study the raw game tape, it is glaringly obvious that Clark was out there surviving on sheer instinct, constantly saving a deeply flawed offense. When she is not playing superhero and carrying the entire team on her back, the whole offense collapses, which is exactly how they ended up with this brutal, embarrassing loss. Look closely at the footage. It looks like a 4-on-5 game, and this is where the annoyance turns into pure, concentrated rage for the fans. Meanwhile, Coach White keeps stepping up to the microphone, repeating the same old hollow excuses after every single game. She tells reporters they need to get Caitlin easy looks and set her up in her favorite spots on the court. But the actual film study reveals a truth that is completely opposite to what the coach is preaching. When Clark finally handles the ball, the lack of support around her is downright painful to watch. You are literally watching 4 highly paid professional athletes standing around like statues, totally frozen on the court, doing absolutely nothing to help their superstar point guard. We are talking about 0 off-ball motion, no hard cuts, and absolutely no coherent offensive scheme to speak of. To put this in perspective, her cleanest shot of the night happened off a basic pin-down screen from Kelsey Mitchell, leading to a quick kick-out pass from Boston and bang, a wide-open three-pointer. That was the sole drawn-up play they actually executed. Frankly, that single sequence exposes how broken this entire offense is, forcing us to ask the most uncomfortable question of all. If they refuse to run actual design plays for their best scorer, what does this coaching staff even do? Looking at how this team functions on court, they might as well throw their entire playbook directly in the trash. Let us shift focus to Aaliyah Boston for a minute, because honestly, this is where the massive contract and huge expectations collide. Boston recently secured a massive 4-year deal, rumored to be worth somewhere around $6 million. So the multi-million-dollar question keeping fans awake at night is as simple as it is incredibly frustrating. If the Indiana Fever refuse to run the standard pick and roll, what is her actual role on the floor without that essential play? The chatter around the league is deafening. If you refuse to play to her strengths, you are basically flushing that massive contract straight down the drain. And honestly, it gets even worse when you look at the sheer physicality of her play. During the post-game press conference, Boston openly complained about being targeted with offensive foul calls. But analysts reviewing the film fired back, showing those whistles blew because she completely failed to secure proper post position using fundamental footwork. Rather than sealing off the defender and pinning them low on the block, she resorted to throwing elbows and shoving opponents. One play was even sent to the replay monitor to check for a flop, resulting in a highly embarrassing overturned call. So she gets pushed around down low. And to make matters worse, we have the bizarre rotation issue, which is probably the most indefensible part of this whole situation. Fans and analysts are highly critical of Stephanie White for using what people are calling hockey-style line changes. She keeps abruptly benching 3 or 4 players at the exact same time, killing any momentum, shuffling the lineup constantly in a way that utterly destroys any chemistry or rhythm the team manages to build. Are these athletes secretly playing through unannounced minutes restrictions? Because if they are, the fans deserve answers. Why is the coach so afraid of benching a veteran like Kelsey Mitchell, especially when her offensive possessions are completely predictable? She hogs the ball, refuses to pass, forces a terrible drive, and gets her shot swatted away at the glass. Meanwhile, you have a player like Raven Johnson, who is out there putting on an absolute clinic as the best player on the floor, yet she got randomly yanked instead of being allowed to ride that hot streak and seal the win. That exact kind of baffling, momentum-killing coaching choice is why this fan base is so furious. You have to reward the players who are actually getting results, not bench them. The proposed solution to this mess is bold, but desperately needed. Unleash a brand new starting unit built around Boston, Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull, Raven Johnson, and Caitlin Clark. The plan is simple. Surround your generational guard with high-energy role players who actually move, cut with purpose, sprint down the floor, and let those expensive veterans come right off the bench. There was this telling moment when Stephanie White just stood there watching Aaliyah Boston struggle through a crucial possession, one that painfully ended in a desperate jump ball. But beyond the coaching decisions, a much heavier blow lands on the team's identity, or rather, their complete lack of one. In this breakdown, the Fever have absolutely no offensive structure to fall back on when things go south. Worse yet, they got physically bullied and totally punked on their own floor. Golden State came in playing heavy physical basketball, and Indiana simply had zero answers for it. Now, critics are calling their post players soft, and the front office isn't escaping this massive wave of heat either. Sudden, serious questions are rising over their offseason moves, specifically their choice to re-sign certain players, about grabbing random roster pieces who failed to pan out, and especially signing Monique Billings to a reported absolutely staggering $850,000 salary for production critics. Coldly call nearly invisible on the stat sheet. Still, it's not all bad news. Raven Johnson keeps getting praised as the absolute best offseason addition this team made, especially when you see how bad the rest of the league's offseason moves looked. But no matter how you spin it, every road in this breakdown leads right back to the coaches, and the list of specific grievances is getting incredibly long. This staff cannot handle the immense pressure. They have no idea how to talk to or work the refs during a game. They do not know how to make real mid-game adjustments when the original plan fails. They completely lack the ability to sub effectively and manage rosters. Worst of all, they have no idea how to draw up an easy high percentage shot for anyone on the floor. Not for their first option, not for their second, and definitely not for their third. When the defense inevitably collapses in the paint to wall off the drive, there is no planned kick-out pass waiting and absolutely zero counterattack ready to punish them. Sure, it is easy to point fingers, but at the end of the day, it's not the refs. It's on you. Here is the part that perfectly ties this whole mess together, and it is easily the most brutal section of the entire video. The creator goes into a hilarious rapid fire list of typical excuses, framing them as Aaliyah Boston's inner thoughts during a rough stretch. It goes like this: I played terrible tonight, blame the refs. I completely failed to get post position down on the block. Oh, that is definitely the ref's fault. I stubbornly put my head down and forced a bad shot against a double team. Must be the refs. This mocking monologue just keeps rolling, getting harder and more absurd with every single line. I settled and jacked up too many bad threes. Clearly, it is the ref's fault. I went multiple halves of professional basketball without scoring a single bucket. Obviously, that is the ref's fault too. Then the real punchline lands like a sledgehammer, dragging everyone right back to reality. No, it is not the ref's fault. It is your fault for not executing, and it is absolutely the coach's fault for constantly putting you in a position to fail. This is the exact core of the entire argument echoing throughout this frustrated fan base. True accountability. Here is the plain expectation. A player securing a massive franchise contract like Boston's absolutely should be out there dropping 18 points and grabbing 12 rebounds every single night she steps on the floor. There is simply no excuse for your star franchise center to put up 0 points in multiple first halves of massive high-stakes games. And when you pair those scoreless halves with some seriously weak, uninspired rebounding, the whole picture looks a million times worse. The refs are not the reason a supposedly dominant frontcourt star completely vanishes from the box score for 20 straight minutes. So let's bring this entire conversation right back to exactly where we started. That maddening image of the head coach standing on the sideline with her arms crossed, helplessly watching Aaliyah Boston struggle through a brutal possession that ended in an embarrassing tie-up and a jump ball. All while a perfectly good timeout sat completely unused right there in her back pocket. That single snapshot is exactly what every critic is pointing to right now. The video blasts the team for looking completely unprepared, arguing they looked like they had not practiced anything of substance beyond basic passing, screening away from the ball, and casually shooting around. And remember, they were coming off a massive 6-day layoff. Sure, you can realistically expect some rust after a week off, but looking completely unprepared is an entirely different story. That is a massive, inexcusable coaching failure. And this is exactly where it gets so incredibly painful for all those loyal Fever fans who stayed up super late or woke up early just to watch this team play. The pure talent is so clearly sitting right there on this roster. You have Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and an incredibly promising young spark plug in Raven Johnson. Let's be clear, the players on this roster aren't the issue here. The real breakdown is the system itself and some of the most bizarre decision-making we've seen. The real issue is this stubborn refusal to do what mathematically works, just to satisfy a rigid coaching philosophy that isn't winning games on the scoreboard. So, I'm leaving you with the million-dollar question here. Is head coach Stephanie White just the completely wrong fit for this insanely talented roster? Or is she just a convenient scapegoat used to cover up much deeper, more systemic roster building problems that the front office initially created? Because let's face it, you can't cure a coaching slump and a broken roster with a single move. At some point, you have to pick a side. So tell me in the comments right now, is this train wreck mostly on the coach, or does it fall squarely on the front office? And honestly, if you think there is another issue altogether, I want to hear your take on that too. Sound off in the comments below. Let's start a real debate and tell me what you think is next for this struggling Indiana Fever team.